YouTube, Aiden/Just Aiden here, with a small equipment update. Just this. You guys might remember my Bach 50B3 OG that I bought, I don't know, a few months ago, I guess. I actually can't remember when I got it. I immediately got it. I played a little bit and I was like, hey, this is not bad. But then I would play my normal horn and be like, oh, the valves, just way too stuffy. I like the sound it made, but I actually tried to use it at work, and there's just a crazy like ceiling on dynamics. You could play right up to the ceiling, and then it would just stop. It would sound really nasty. It would not respond. Just couldn't play it loud. And if I could get away with not playing loud, I probably would have just kept it as is, because I thought it sounded pretty good, and it played okay. I don't think it played really amazingly. Obviously a lot better with my modern slides, which this has on right now. But I managed to get some Shires rotors from my friend Ben for a pretty good price. They're used, and they're pretty well used. I wouldn't say they're in like tip-top condition or anything. But Shires rotors are way better than these stock Bach rotors. So I handed the horn off to John Sandhagen and had him build this for me with the stock 50B30 wrap. Obviously it doesn't look anything like that now because these valves are a totally different size. There's no way that everything would just line up as is, so it's all been rebuilt. This tube, for instance, used to be like way up here, and it was like above the bell. I hate how that Bach wrap looks, and he does too, so he redid it. So it's not so tall. This nice curvy bit right here is a can stool part actually, and is actually soldered to this top tube. So it's not going to buzz or anything. Second valve kind of looks the same. I also think he might have like flipped the valve wraps around. I can't remember. In any case, it looks different and plays a lot different as well. Before you'd get into the valve register, or you play even C or B in the staff, and the response would be so different. And now it's a lot more even. I can actually play notes down there. The sound doesn't change quite as much. But it still does. So I think the way this came, it sounded pretty vintage Bach. I've had a couple Bachs in the past that just the way they sounded was very vintage. It sounded like an old Bach trombone. And I do like that sound, but that sound tends to kind of dominate the sound rather than my sound, which isn't entirely that vintage Bach sound. It kind of like occludes the things that I'm doing. It kind of makes my sound a little more translucent rather than really clear. And my other horn is very clear. Like, I feel like what I do is what comes out of the bell. And so this it's not quite to that point. It's still got that vintageness to it. It's kind of weird. I play it and I'm like, wow, that's a cool sound, but it's not really me. It almost sounds like the Con Greenho that I had for a little bit, or another similar Con maybe. Just the response, the notes just pop out really quickly. Just a really easy articulation, and the front on the other side of the bell is really easily heard. I played this and my other horn side by side with my wife listening, and she was turned around so she couldn't see which horn was which. And every time the articulations on this would pop out like crazy. This horn is also not as even as my other horn. Something I've kind of just gotten used to on that horn is that when I get in and out of registers, when I use the valves, when I don't use the valves, everything kind of has the same sound. It just sounds like the same trombone. This doesn't quite do that. You get down to low C, low B, it kind of gets that, gets a little bit of, chutzpah to the notes. There's a little bit of extra sound there. A little bit of brightness, perhaps. not a bad thing, but for my classical playing especially, that's not something I really look for in a trombone. That's evened out just a little bit with the dual burst slide, but this plays really well with my Edwards single bore with my Bach 50 lead pipe. The high register is also really, actually very good. It just kind of sings. The high B flat feels like it has a nice centered slot. There's no like reaching up to get it. There's no sometimes the high B flat and the high A flat, the 7th and 8th partials, feel like there's almost like a bridge between them that you can just kind of like go between them really way too easily on bass trombones. And this doesn't feel like that. It feels like they're very well separated. It also feels pretty flexible. Because the slots are very well defined. Sometimes on Bachs, the slots are not as well defined. They'll be larger. Obviously with the dual bore slide, the slots are all just a little bit larger. And something about this setup makes the slots pretty defined. It's not like they're small, I don't think. If I put my Edwards Sterling silver lead pipe in here, the slots are now like razor sharp. Like you play the note here and that is it. Anything away from that and the horn basically just doesn't make any noise. So that's a little too harsh for this. I do wish I had maybe a little more open lead pipe to try with this to see what it sounds like. One of the big drawbacks right now is I'm using the original linkage and levers from the 50B30. Actually, not the linkage, but just the levers and the like springs and stuff, and saddles. The linkage is new because that stuff isn't going to work. It has some hobby linkages on it, which are actually totally fine. The problem is the levers and the springs already were way too weak, especially the second valve spring. The first valve is not great either. And so with these larger, slightly heavier valves, they're even just a little bit slower. So I'm, if I keep this, and I'm not sure if I am actually, I think I'm gonna get much better levers and springs, because that's really one of the best things about my my other horn with the Meinl-Schmidt rotors, is that especially, well, I guess both valves are just so quick and smooth, and you just don't notice them. They have a very positive action. So you put it down, it's just like, yes, I have put this valve down. You let it go, it returns instantly, and you're like, yes, this valve is now up. I know exactly where it is. Whereas this kind of feels a little mushy, like there's a lot of play in this lever, and the valve is, or the spring is really slow. The valves are not slow at all. The spring is really slow, so it returns slowly. You can hear it. And that means I will miss slurs and miss notes sometimes, which is kind of a bummer. So I just talked about maybe I'm keeping this or not. I got this pretty much to use at work at Disneyland where I play, because I had been using my regular horn because I really like it, and the Con 112H that I had been using is good, but is just so different than my regular horn that it just didn't seem worth trying to juggle these two bass trombones that are totally different from each other. So I thought I'd get another Bach, put some good valves on it, and just use that. Obviously this isn't a great looking horn, shiny wise. I think it looks good, but it's not going to get like totally beat up outside. But of course, just randomly they bought a Yamaha Xeno 830, the independent rotor valve Yamaha. And usually I don't like those, but the one they got is actually really good, and I don't mind playing it, and it's not miles different than my other Bach. So it feels kind of silly to have basically like 2.5 bass trombones at home, because I still have that 112H banging around, and then one that I actually use at work. Obviously I play bass trombone away from Disneyland, but do I really need 3 different horns at home? And I have another Bach 50B on the way, so it feels a little silly to have so many horns, especially when this one doesn't seem to meet my requirements for my outside of Disney playing quite as well as my other horn does. So this might be going on the chopping block. I'm going to get that 50B, see if the slide matches up with this. I think it's really neat. I love how it looks. I think this wrap is just super baller. And I do like the sound, but the sound I don't think is quite me. So we'll see what happens to this. I'll see you guys next time.